Crazy person talking to myself. Okay, so welcome to everybody once again, and not only talking to myself this time. Today's webinar is going to be on the nutrition pest connection, and it's going to be myself to start off with, and Justin's going to be joining us very, very shortly. So if you would like to write in the chat where you're from, where you're joining us from, tell us a little bit about yourself, and so that we can all get to know each other and also connect with other aquaponic people. And then, if you have any questions throughout today, just write them in the chat, and then we can get through to them at the end. If there are some questions that relate to some of the topics and we do have some space, we will answer them during the presentation itself, but I prefer to answer them at the end. And then, I think that's about it for the formalities. So let's get us going. And we can have a fun time, and lovely to see everybody joining us, Jackie and Digby. I see Drew's there, Sharon's there. Welcome to everybody. And then
what? Yeah.
Just if I'll mute everybody. Hopefully I don't mute myself. Just otherwise it does. Okay, there we go. Okay, otherwise it does cause a little bit of an issue. Okay, let us begin. Okay, so just once again, welcome to everybody. We're going to go through some things that a lot of aquaponic growers struggle with in terms of not necessarily knowing. And your pests, they're not necessarily the problems, and these problems aren't random at all. These pest issues actually stem from a biochemical invitation from your plants. And by the end of this presentation, it's going to take about 30 minutes or so. And hopefully you'll understand a lot more on why these nutrient deficiencies take place in the plants, and how these deficiencies in the plants actually attract the pests. And at the end of the day, honestly, we're going to find out that it's like a dinner bell. And when we are able to stop the plants and these biochemical sequences from happening, you'll also then stop the pest pressures as well. Okay. So in aquaponics, here's what nobody actually tells you. When you see the pests in your system, they didn't just randomly choose your plants. Your nutrient deficient plants actually invited them into the system itself. And here's the devastating part. When you panic and grab the wrong spray product, you don't just kill your pests, you can kill your plants, you can kill your bacteria, and actually crash your system. And you can lose everything that you've worked weeks, months, even years on. And it's going to take you about 3 to 4 months to restart your whole system. And we've seen this happen far too often. So here's what makes aquaponics slightly different from other growing methods. You're not managing just that one organism, you're actually managing 3: your plants, your fish, and your bacterial community. And this is what makes the whole system work, all 3 of these together. And one wrong spray decision can actually hurt and kill everything. It can kill all your fish that you have inside your system, and in just 38 hours or less, you can absolutely crash everything from your bacteria, your fish, and your plants as well. And that initial cycling of your system, growing the bacterial colonies, that when you're starting it in the beginning, takes about 6 weeks. So there are going to be some deficiencies. And sometimes you might not have the actual knowledge, and you can use that wrong spray and crash your system. And those first 6 weeks have been wasted. And sometimes even when you've been going for several years or decades and you use this wrong spray, all of that work can be lost. And it's going to take you those 6 weeks to actually reestablish that bacterial colony. So there's no actually generic pest control advice that you're going to be able to find on the internet. And usually those ones that come from your hydroponic systems or soil growing systems, those are the ones that are actually going to destroy your system in the end. But it's not all bad. So you do have some good news. If you stop fighting the pest symptoms and actually start addressing the root cause, And that root cause is going to be able to find the plant nutrition. And that is what is actually the cause of everything. And when the plants are nutritionally complete, they produce complex sugars that pests literally can't digest. They become naturally pest resistant. And that's what we're going to try and understand and unpack today. So let's explain the simple biochemistry of the plants. When your plants photosynthesize, they produce sugars, but here's the critical part. Which type of sugars they produce depends entirely on their nutritional status. So plants with the whole complete nutrition, those 17 essential elements that we spoke about in the previous webinar itself, all of these essential elements in proper balance complete their metabolic cycles. And that's the plants are able to complete that metabolic cycle. They produce complex sugars, and these complex sugars are starches, structural carbohydrates, and compounds that require sophisticated digestive enzymes to break them down. But when plants lack the nutrients, most commonly in aquaponics, those are going to be potassium, calcium, and magnesium. The pests, they cannot, the plants themselves, they cannot actually complete these complex metabolic pathways. And when they are unable to do this, they're stuck producing simple sugars. They're just trying to survive and make do with what they can. And these simple sugars are usually glucose and fructose. And this is where your pest problem begins, because the pests themselves are attracted to those simple molecules. So this is why this matters. Insects like your aphids, your whiteflies, thrips, they have incredibly simple digestive systems because they're very basic insects themselves. Those insects can only produce basic enzymes that are able to break down those simple sugars, being the glucose and fructose. And when they're able to break these down quickly, it's their fast food, and this is what they are attracted to. But when your plant is producing these complex sugars, these insects, your thrips, your aphids, they can't efficiently digest them. And that's what actually becomes toxic to them because it just rots inside them. So if you want to look at it, they're trying to eat a meal, but say they're trying to eat a steak, but they don't have any teeth, for example, and they're never going to get anywhere. And it's actually going to do them more harm in the long run. So it's quite fascinating in a way. These insects can actually detect the difference biochemically in the plant. So they know exactly which ones are nutrient deficient and they go to those. So simple sugars in your plant sap actually create a higher osmotic pressure, and the tissues are sweeter and they're easier to pierce. So the plant has become weaker, the cell walls are weaker, the pest can actually bite through it and get to that sap is what it means. And the pests, they choose these plants that are nutrient deficient, and they choose them over the healthy ones in your system. So when you have a potassium deficiency, which is essentially universal in aquaponics, if you don't supplement, your plants are biochemically actually signaling, here's a free buffet, here's an easy meal to all the pests that might be in your system, outside the system, and you're actually inviting them into your aquaponic system itself. So now, how do we measure the sugar that's inside your plant? So there's a very simple, foolproof one. And if you can do this, you're going to look like a pro in your system. So we use the Brix test, and the Brix test, we use a Brix refractometer. You can buy this for about 400 to 800 Rand, and it's a one-time investment. It measures the total dissolved solids in the plant sap, which primarily is your sugar content in your sap. So think of it like you're taking the plant's temperature when you're measuring the actual sap itself. So what you can do, you can take a couple of leaves, or you can take your plant sap, you can get a garlic press, squeeze it out onto your refractometer, and you can have a look at it and you can observe what your sugar reading looks like. So the research shows that the plant's Brix reading, when it's below 6 Brix, you have predominantly simple sugars. And these plants, they experience 80% more pest pressure when your sugar reading is 6 and below. And plants with a Brix reading above 12 Brix have complete sugars. So this is where they have those complex sugars in their system, and they experience actually 80% less pest pressure. So this is measurable, the Brix inside your plants, and you can also measure essentially the nutrient deficiencies. And when you do this, it's predictable, it's science, and you're not guessing at all. You can understand how your plant is actually doing. And the key insight is the Brix, when it's declining for 2 consecutive weeks, it means nutritional stress is starting. So it's actually starting before you see any visible symptoms on your leaves. And we spoke about where you might have, say, the yellowing along the edge of the leaf, and that's going to be your potassium deficiency. So you're going to be able to pick this up in your plant 2 weeks before it actually starts to show in the leaves itself. And by doing this, you're going to be able to catch it before the pests arrive. And inevitably, you're going to be able to try and fix this before it becomes a problem in your system. So the power of understanding this mechanism is absolutely inevitable. It's huge. Okay, so now here's why this is especially critical in aquaponics. The fish feed gives you nitrogen and phosphorus, but those are good. But potassium is still lacking in your system. The fish feed provides only about 15 to 20 ppm of potassium. And say you've got fruiting plants in your system, they need potassium levels at about 60 to 100 ppm. So if you're looking at your fish feed and how much potassium it provides, it's actually like a 400% shortfall if you have fruiting plants in your system. You're also going to need calcium, magnesium, and iron in your system. And usually this is also a shortfall if you're only supplementing with fish feed, because those are not actually contained within your fish feed. And these are your 3 things that you usually dose into your system in conjunction with potassium. And also, if you've got your pH that might be out, you can also lock these nutrients out. So it's also important to take care of that. And these specific deficiencies, such as your potassium, your calcium, your magnesium, are exactly the nutrient plants need to produce the complex sugars. And they build strong cell walls. Those strong cell walls are essentially like your burglar bars. They're able to keep the invaders out of your plants. They're not going to actually want to. They can't pierce it and get that plant sap that they're after to get those sugars. So virtually every aquaponic system, if you're not supplementing properly your potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron, your plants are not going to be producing those complex sugars. They're going to be producing these simple sugars. And when they're doing that, you're biochemically signaling to pests, hey, come and eat me. And all your crops that you're growing are going to be under attack. And this is not something that you want to happen in your system itself. So how do we fix this? Professional aquaponics doesn't rely on fish feed alone. We use 4 different distinct nutrient pathways. Each one addresses different limitations, but together, if you're able to do these 4 different pathways, you're able to provide complete nutrition. And the complete nutrition means complex sugar production in your plant, which means you've actually got a natural pest resistance. So we'll break down all these different pathways: the fish feed management, solid waste mineralization, liquid supplementation, and foliar applications. Okay, so the first pathway is the fish feed management. This is essentially your foundation in aquaponics. Fish feed excels at providing you with nitrogen and phosphorus, but as we have established, it's critically short on potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So this is mathematically reality, not a failure. Fish don't need high potassium, so it's not in your feed. Your strategy here is to try and ideally choose feeds with enhanced potassium content, but this is usually quite expensive and it's not necessarily one that's available. So if you do have that, you're able to adjust the feeding rates based on your plants, whether they're in that vegetative or the fruiting stage. But otherwise, you can also dose this into your system. So if you've got in your fish feed, it's only providing about 40 to 50%. So you're going to need to then try and add additionally. But your fish feed is providing you with that nitrogen and phosphorus for your main section there. Then what we can do is we can filter out that fish waste, and then we go into the solid waste mineralization. So this is actually one of the hidden gold mines in aquaponics itself. So when we remove the solid fish waste, and a lot of people throw it away, you actually are discarding about 30 to 40% of the available nutrients that are still left inside there. So a lot in the commercial systems or professional systems, we use mineralization and we use the aerobic bacteria and in special digesters, and our one's called the mini DOS, where we can actually break down these solids anywhere from 12 to 48 hours. And in that, we're able to create a concentrated nutrient tea. And we actually reintroduce this back into the system. And this is where we can recover additional nitrogen and phosphorus and other trace minerals and some organic molecules that we need. But we're not actually wanting to introduce the solids that are left over that sludge. So if we just left this in our filters, it'll break down, it'll cause anaerobic digestion, can cause denitrification, not the best thing. So we actually take this out, add air to it to break it down, and try and extract all those nutrients themselves, and we can get this going. So we try and get the bacteria to work for us, where we can use this to extract all the nutrients that we might need, and it's costing us less money at the end of the day. So your aerobic bacteria, they only need about 2 ppm of dissolved oxygen. We need the proper temperature. The warmer the temperature, the faster they're able to work. And the magic ingredient is time. How do we know when it's ready? When we actually smell it and it doesn't smell like an effluent waste itself. Okay, so what else do we need? And we'll go into the third pathway itself. So the pathway 3 is when we start to dose this back into the system. This is what we call the liquid supplementation. And this is where you directly dose the missing nutrients into your system water. Primarily potassium is going to be your biggest one, especially for those fruiting plants, and then as well as your calcium, magnesium, and iron. So some of the critical constraints in aquaponics, these supplements must be fish safe. You can't use your synthetic fertilizers with heavy metals or any toxic compounds. And you don't want to use any products that will kill your nitrifying bacteria. We've also got other products like potassium sulfate, calcium chloride, magnesium sulfate, which is an Epsom salt, chelated iron. These all work as the supplementations that we can add for these additional nutrients we might be lacking. So this must be stage specific to your vegetative plants. They need about 30.
Sorry, Mark. Just a quick, are you sharing any slides?
I should be.
It's not showing up.
Well, thanks for telling me. Why did nobody in the chat tell me? Let's see. Am I sharing now? Can you see?
Yay, I can see them. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Thanks for pushing that up. Okay, so should we go back slightly, or you guys, are we happy to continue? Let's ask. Sorry, I've got some cats that are. Okay, so sorry, I've got some cats that don't like it when it's open. Oh, it's closed. Happy to continue. Okay, cool. So on this stage, we're talking about the stage specific. We've got our vegetative plants that require a potassium concentration about 35 to 45 ppm. And then when it starts to fruit, that increases. So we're going to need to supplement with additional potassium itself. As we were saying, all of the things that we add into our system themselves, they all need to be fish safe. So, and also we don't want to make sure that they are toxic at all, because killing our bacteria is not going to be beneficial at all to the aquaponic system. So we do this we test weekly. We are able to monitor and see our actual levels that we need, whether it's vegetative plants or it's going to be our fruiting plants. And this will also show up in our bricks as well. We can see are our plants doing all right. We can go into different bricks tests on another webinar itself. And so we go into our commercial course where we actually spend time on how do you do all of these tests and break down the real importance of the bricks itself. Okay, so then on the fourth pathway is going to be the foliar application itself. So this foliar application is where nutrition meets the pest control. And it's brilliant because it bypasses the water system entirely. So it's actually a much faster application. So it's much quicker in its reaction, but its lasting effect is going to be much shorter compared to if it was in the water. So the foliar sprays have two uses in aquaponics. The first is that emergency correction. So when your pH might not be the best in your system, you're actually locking out those nutrients, especially the most common ones probably going to be iron and calcium. And you're going to need a rapid response. So foliar sprays are able to deliver those nutrients directly through to the leaf, stomata, and it bypasses that root zone, and then it doesn't have to go through the whole stem to the actual leaves where these sugars are made through photosynthesis. So when it bypasses the root zone, you can see results in about 5 to 7 days instead of weeks when you have to dose it into your system. The second thing that is a benefit for this, you're able to use this for key pest control. So you can be preventative, you can use preventative nutrition, and you can also do it for pest management. And you can combine those two together in one foliar spray. So your weekly preventative foliar sprays, you might include things like seaweed extracts, fulvic acid, compost teas that are rich in your beneficial microbes. And so we're going to break down the different sprays that you have. We'll show you. So I'm just going to introduce them to you now. Your preventative strategy firstly provides direct nutrition to strengthen the plants and boost complex sugar production. Secondly, it's going to colonize the leaf surface with your beneficial bacteria that will outcompete any pathogenic bacteria and also any molds that you might have. And thirdly, it creates that holistic environment for pests on the leaf surface itself. So it creates a hostile environment, not holistic. Got my words mixed up there. So firstly, this is going to be like your tier 1 of 3 different spray systems that we have, but we're going to cover that in the next couple slides. So the foliar program is simultaneously feeding your plants as well as preventing pests without ever touching the water where your fish and bacteria live. So when all 4 pathways work together, the fish feed base and your mineralized solids, your strategic liquid supplementation, also your dosing, and this preventative foliar nutrition, your plants will achieve your complete nutrition itself. And when we get the complete nutrition to the actual plant itself, it means that your plants are going to be creating these complex sugars. And when they are creating these complex sugars, they're actually becoming pest resistant itself. So we are literally engineering a plant to be pest resistant through adequate and proper nutrition for it. Okay, so these are the 3 tiers. So we've gone through the 4 different pathways: your fish feed, the mineralization of the solids. We've got that liquid supplementation and the foliar spraying. So now this foliar spraying, we actually break into 3 different tiers themselves. So firstly, we've got our preventative, which is the most common one that we're going to be doing. And then if we find a problem, we'll go on to our reactive, And then if that reactive is not working, that's when we go into our focused, targeted sprays. So even if you've got perfectly healthy plants, you can still have pests that come in. Like if you've got birds that fly into your system, their drop-ins can cause problems. They themselves can carry some parasites and pests. Things can arrive with the wind. If you've got an open system, if you've got larger holes, what your neighbor has, there's many different ways that pests can enter into it, but it's how we manage them. So let's break down this 3-tier approach now. Okay, so your tier 1 is going to be essentially your weekly preventative spray that you're going to be doing. So this is pathway 4 in action. So all 3 of these sprays are all talking about that 4th pathway. So let's just say every Monday we spray before 7 o'clock in the morning. That 7 in the morning is kind of like early on when the sun is just rising. So, or even before sunrise would be the most beneficial. You want to spray your entire system, and the timing is very important because the plant stomatas are starting to open. And when they start to open, they've got the spray there, they're able to absorb as much as they can. And also, if you spray in the middle of the day, if you've ever had a drop of water on your phone and you can actually see the pixels, it acts like a magnifying glass, and the sun rays themselves can then burn the leaves themselves, and it's not beneficial if you are burning up your solar panels. The plants are going to, when the plant leaves are damaged, their production of sugars is then compromised. Okay. So a simple recipe, what we can use is 2 liters of compost tea. It's been a little bit diluted as well, so it's not going to be your complete compost tea that you get out of it. It's going to be super, super rich. So you kind of want to break that down like 10 mils to about 50 mils of water. So it's going to be about, say, we'll do about 200 mils, and the rest is going to be your water. 50 ml extract of seaweed, and you also want to add your fulvic acid. It's a really, really good mixture of your micro and trace elements, your micronutrients and trace elements, and then the rest of it is going to be water itself. So that's one of the best things. You spray this onto your plants and it directly feeds those leaves, strengthens them. You can get those beneficial bacteria and microbes onto your plants that can then outcompete those pathogenic ones themselves. So here, spray your whole system, and this is where you're going to find there's going to be a large reduction in your pest pressure because your plants are able to get your nutrients themselves. But remember, your preventative spray is a quick fix, and this is just to kind of give your plants that extra boost on vitamins and minerals that they might need. But you still can't be having a nutrient deficient water in your aquaponic system. You're still going to have to do your dosing, because it's like taking your multivitamins but eating McDonald's every day. You're still going to get sick itself. Okay, so now say you've done your inspections and you've started to see pest outbreaks that are happening, or you haven't been able to keep on top of your dosing, and now there's an issue in your system, and you're starting to pick up a whole lot of pests in your actual system. So you can either see this visually on your plants, that there are a whole lot more pests, you've got a lot more aphids or white flies or spider mites or something, or even by looking at your sticky traps that you might have, those yellow and blue cards, and you've noticed that the amount of pests that you have them have literally doubled within the past week. So this is where you are going to start to with a reactive spray program itself. So you're going to immediately switch from the preventative to that reactive spray mode. So here, you're going to spray about every 3 to 4 days. And the reason why you need to do the spray every 3 to 4 days is to break the life cycle of certain insects themselves. So you also want to rotate your options. You don't want to use the same spray every time, because you can also create evolution within your pests where they can become resistant to the sprays that you're doing and the concentrations to which you're spraying. And remember, we don't want to be super toxic, because if it goes into our water, then it's going to be an issue for our aquaponic system itself. So if we're using neem oil, that's at a 0.5 to 1% concentration. It is fish safe when it's applied to the foliage. But if you do, because you can use neem oil as like an anesthetizing agent for your fish to put them to sleep. So if this does get into your water, usually in smaller systems, you've got to worry more. Larger systems, not as much because of the water concentration that you have, but still, you don't want these sprays to go into your water. So it's a good practice to try and avoid it overspraying and letting them all drip into your actual system itself. Then you've got Bacillus thuringiensis. This is usually used for caterpillars, fungus, gnats. And then you can also use a garlic and chili spray. That's usually a homemade one that you can make, and it's a natural deterrent itself. So some rules that you want to have, as I've said, only want to apply to your foliage. You don't want to overspray so it drips into your water, because you can put your system at risk if these concentrations get too high and go to your plants, not your plants, your fish or your bacteria itself, and you can experience mortalities. So whenever you do these reactive sprays, and also the next tier that we'll talk about as well, always watch your fish behavior, especially for that day, usually about 4 to 8 hours, just to make sure that your fish are doing all right. And you always want to check them after your sprays. So if you see any signs of stress in your fish, such as gasping, erratic swimming, that's not normal for them, you want to do an immediate 50% water change of your system, just so you can reduce the concentration of these toxins in your system itself. So if you stay in the reactive mode, you're going to stay in this reactive mode until your sticky trap count halves again. And you want to do this for about 2 consecutive weeks. So then once you've gone through those 2 consecutive weeks of this reactive spray, you've seen your pest pressure stop, you can go back to tier 1, being your preventative one, where you're giving your system those probiotics, those good bacteria that you're looking for. So most problems, if you catch them early, all of them, your pest pressures will disappear in about 1 to 2 weeks. So it's all about doing those daily monitorings, checking that your system is all right. So tier 3 is one that you kind of never ever want to get to. You also don't really want to get to tier 2. But if you get to tier 3, this is where you need to take a little bit more precaution. You're not going to be spraying your whole system. You're only going to be spraying very small sections of your system. And this is about 5 to 10% of the actual plant itself, because of how concentrated and how dangerous it can be. So, see, some people are drawing on the screen. Okay, just if you can just sort that one out. Okay, so tier 3, these are just your targeted sprays. Okay, so it's like a surgeon going in to do small precision adjustments to your system itself. So this is for intensive pest outbreaks where you need intervention and you're not going to be treating your whole system. So you want to only limit it to 5 to 10% of the total plant foliage. If you spray to more of the plant, then you can actually kill the plant itself, because of the concentration of the formulations that we're going to be applying to them. And you also don't want this to go into water, because it will harm your fish. Also, if you use it throughout your system, worse things can happen. So this is only just for localized hotspots on the plant where all those pests are. So usually you put this in a much smaller bottle where you can literally apply just to those places itself. So we also usually have 3 different bottles, where you've got your pyrrole in the one, and this is mainly for your pests that you're going to be spraying. The bottle number 2 is going to be your fungicide. So usually you might see white mold and stuff like that growing on it. That's what you're going to treat it with. It's usually your trichoderma or bacillus. This is not your Bacillus thuringiensis in tier 2, but this is Bacillus amylo fascians, which is a fungicide mixture itself. And these two, you need to kind of replace them every week because they are living creatures, they're living bacteria, and usually if you keep them in the bottle in the sunlight and stuff like that, they will die. So those are replaced every week. And that's why you also want to do them in smaller bottles, so you're not spending a lot of money on replacing them itself. The third bottle is going to be your Thegro and a fulvic acid foliar, and this is to boost the plants themselves after you have treated them. So it's going to help the plants to recover and grow. So this is not necessarily going to be toxic at all. Your bottle 1 and 2 are. Bottle 3 is to then help the plant recover as well. So how are we going to apply this? Only apply to about 10% of the actual plant foliage itself. We want to place any pads or stuff at the bottom of your plant where you're spraying, so you can actually capture any of these drips, because you don't want any of it to enter into your aquaponic system and water itself. You only apply the concentrated treatment directly to the affected place of the plant, not to the healthy sections of the plant at all, because it can cause damage and you don't want to harm your sections of the plant that are healthy. Then, just like your tier 2, your reactive spray, you want to monitor your fish as well closely for 4 hours, but honestly, it's always good to look at it more, just so you are on the safe side itself. So if you do have severely damaged plants and they are irrecoverable, they've too much pest damage, literally bag the plants themselves. You don't want to put them into your compost because this will spread. So you're either going to dispose of it or you will burn it itself. Okay, so those are the different treatments that we have. Okay, so how it all works together, taking the 4 different pathways, these 3 different tiers of spraying that we have. So you want to start with a complete nutrition. You want to look at your 4 different pathways in your system. You want to be able to give your plants all the resources they need to produce these complex sugars naturally. Okay, so the best way to do this is through monitoring your bricks. You can also look at sticky traps, do your visual inspections, the scouting for pests. You want to look at any things in your plants you might have missed, like the change of the colors of the leaves and any other signs of stress that they might be going into. So you can also do your prevention problems with your tier 1 spray. So that's going to be your like your probiotics that you're going to be given, your nutrient solutions that you're going to be putting onto your plants, which is the quick action. And these are also going to offer your beneficial microbes just to keep your system healthy. And if you find that your bricks drops or that your pests start to come in and you can identify which pest, then you can identify which reactive program you want to start to spray. If that gets out of hand, then you can bump it up to your tier 3, where you're doing the localized hotspots that you're going to be spraying on. And always monitor your fish when you're doing tier 2 and tier 3. So the goal isn't to eliminate tier 2 and tier 3 sprays. You keep them there for when you need them. And hopefully you never have to use them, but realistically, you are going to have times where your system will have some of these problems, and keep them there. So also don't create the sprays every week if you're not using them. Only make them, especially in tier 3, when you are using them, because otherwise it starts to get quite expensive itself. And if you're using tier 2 and tier 3 very often, your insects in your system can develop immunity to it, and you're going to need higher and higher and higher concentrations, which is going to then become problematic because you're not going to be able to get rid of them at all. So you build up that immunity of the system. So this is the complete system of how to create a healthy system. You want to dose and make sure that your plants are getting all the adequate nutrients. If they aren't, you need to make sure that your monitoring is on track and you can find these problems before they get to the need of having tier 2 or tier 3. Okay, so you always want to be in the prevention. You want to try and prevent it from happening. If you find something's wrong, be reactive and do it quickly. So if you want to take this and actually start to implement this into your system, honestly, you can start on Monday, or you can start today, whenever you want. Test your water. Make sure that you've got the right pH. pH is going to lock out the nutrients, and it's mainly the biggest cause of these nutrient deficiencies. Make sure that you are dosing the correct nutrients into your system. For those that are using RO water and they're not treating it, that's where you're going to have to really monitor your EC. If your EC is too low, it's actually going to be taking all minerals out of the plant to try and get the right concentration in the water and correct the EC. So you want to treat that RO water before it goes into your system. Also, if you're not doing any composting, creating your compost tea or your vermiculture liquid, you want to start doing that, because that is essentially some of the best nutrients you can get for your system itself. So test your water Tuesday. The following day, you can start to use any of these preventive sprays if you need. If you've found that you need to get to, it's not your tier 2, sorry, your tier 1, you want to be preventative. You can also do this on Monday as well. And then you want to do your bricks. Do your bricks after you've treated your plants as well. And you can do a control, make sure that you know exactly where things are, what's happening, and then start to hang your traps in and do those daily inspections. So start off with testing, start doing your tier 1 sprays. If you find that things aren't improving, then you're going to need to go to your tier 2, and hopefully nobody will go to tier 3 itself. So just a little bit of an example, as it's always nice to try and find the monetary value of it. Like per month, how much is this actually going to cost you in doing these spray programs? It's going to cost you about less than 300 Rand a month. Your initial outlay for some of the like the Bacillus thuringiensis and some of those can be a little bit more expensive itself, but when you're using them on a large commercial scale, like 300 square meters, you're looking at about 300 Rand a month. So every week it's less than 100 Rand. And we've had systems that have gone 18 months without huge pest infestations when they are religiously following this. And when they start to slip up and when there's issues with the staff and they've missed a couple of days of work, then we find the pest issues can start. So we've had systems that have gone 18 months without these huge pest infestations by following this process itself. And depending on the size of your system, the crop that you're growing, some of the losses can be 8 grand and they can skyrocket. We've had losses and system failures where it's literally losing 50K a month in these issues themselves. So also you want to be able to not look at this as a cost. It's not a huge cost that you're going to be doing. It's more like an insurance policy that you're having for your system itself. And doing these checks, you need to do them religiously. When you start to slip up with the nutrients that you're giving to your plants and doing these tests and skipping 1 week and I'll do it next week, it's not a problem. This is when they can start to compound and you can start to get the losses. So it's an insurance, you have to do it. Stick to your protocols that you have, and it's honestly going to help you at the end of the day, because when you start to incur these losses and you don't have enough produce to give to your clients, that's when they're going to start to look for other farmers, and now you're actually losing all the income that you can get. And this is where farms start to fail themselves, because they're not able to fulfill those orders. When you can't fulfill the orders, your clients are going to look for a more reliable person. So this is essential to understand itself. So if we've got a 300 square meter commercial farm, and say they're growing lettuce and basil, They've implemented everything that we have discussed today, that 4-pathway system where you've got your fish feed, your mineralization, your dosing, and also your 3-tiered spray program. They're monitoring that bricks. They've got the sticky traps. We've had farms, as I told you, 12 to 18 months, 0 pest outbreaks. They're able to increase their bricks. Remember, bricks below 6, you're going to have pests. You want to be above 8 and 10, and all different crops have different levels of bricks themselves. When you've also got a healthy system, your fish are also going to be happy as well. Your bacteria are going to be happy. When one of them start to fail, that's when you'll have that knock-on effect. As this total pest management, they've even brought down to 150 Rand that they've been spending, because when you start to make those compost teas, you're doing those vermiculture liquids as well, you're able to save them. And when you're able to implement these programs, you're saving yourself thousands of Rand at the end of the month, and you are not losing any revenue itself. So when you understand the simple sugar secret that the pests themselves are unable to eat the sugars and the sap of healthy plants, you want to try and build up those healthy plants. And building up those healthy plants, you're able to deter the pests away. And the pests themselves, yes, they can come via different mechanisms, by the wind, by birds and stuff like that. But if they're in your system, you're healthy plants, they're not going to be able to feed on them, because those plants are going to be biochemically unappetizing. And most of them are honestly going to move on, hopefully to your neighbor's farms or somewhere else. As long as they're not on your farm, that is the best thing that you can do. So the power of the system itself is in your nutrients that you have. If you've got the right nutrients for your plants, you are going to be in a way better state with less pests themselves. So yeah. Okay, so to recap, we want to try and monitor our system. We want to do those daily checks to try and detect anything. If we've got any problems, we want to be able to react quickly. We want to try and give the plants all those nutrients it needs, the foliar applications, the dosing, so the plant can create those complex sugars. When you create those complex sugars, we've got the natural pest resistance itself. And so yeah, so in the end, when you have pests, it's not actually about fighting the pests. It's about building plants that pests don't want to eat in the first place. So yeah, so that's kind of what we have. So yeah, so we do have a spray program that we're going to give out, and some of the more of the monitoring techniques that you can look at. And yeah, start with this new program either on Monday, start with it tomorrow, whenever you want. But the sooner you do it, the better your system is going to be. And now we'll open the floor up to questions themselves. So we'll dive into the chat. Okay, so we've got a question. So firstly, yeah, we will be able to share the slides with everybody. That's not a problem at all. So we will, especially with with them not showing up in the beginning of the session. So we've got a question from David. Are all the nutrients able to be introduced to the plant by spraying the leaves? So yes and no. They are able to be introduced to the plant, and the plant is able to absorb the nutrients through the leaves, but that's not the best way. You want to be able to dose them into the actual water itself, where it's going to be a longer lasting, but it does take a little bit more time for the plant to absorb those nutrients and transport them to the leaves. When you spray it onto the leaves themselves, the leaves are able to absorb them much quicker, but the longevity of those nutrients that are available to it is just very, very short. So it's kind of like a quick fix. It's like putting on like a bandage on a gushing wound itself, but you'll still need to say go for surgery, and that surgery would be metaphorically your actual nutrients that you would need to be dosed into the water itself. Okay, so question from Jan. I sprayed with bioneem yesterday and this morning. I found one dead tilapia. Rest of my fish look fine and healthy. Coincidence, or did I cause it? So that would probably need to say, how much bioneem did you spray? Also, how much went into the water? If quite a bit of it went into the water, then it could be the problem. Remember, you don't want any of these sprays to go into your water itself. So hopefully we can say it's a coincidence. But yeah, just look at your fish and make sure none of the others are dying. That fish itself, if it did die, it could be that it was genetically weaker than the others. But yeah, as long as the rest of your fish, majority of them are okay. But yeah, just use that the one might have passed away as just an eye opener. Keep an eye on them, but it seems like it's the rest have all made it. They're not swimming erratically. They're not trying to gasp for air or something like that. And they're feeding all right. You should be in the clear. Okay, so we've got my brassicas always get aphids. Rest of plants always find Y. So Drew, that can be because different plants require different amount of nutrients, and your brassicas could be just weaker than the rest. It could be like the trap crop in your system itself. Usually, it could also be that they might be requiring different potassium concentrations. Could be one. I don't know if you've done any potassium tests, because the brassicas are going to be flowering. And say you're growing lettuce and the rest, they don't require as much potassium. So like your leafy greens or your non-fruiting plants, they could be because of those concentrations that might be different in the nutrients, which can be causing that effect. So all different plants, they do require different spectrums of nutrients, and you need to try and find that balance and understand by doing the test and trying to find out which nutrient might be lacking. So yeah, we will break down, I think, at a stage to do another webinar on how to do a Brix test. Might be quite interesting, because it's once you understand that, you'll really understand it. Kale, yeah, kale can also have that. It usually is a weaker place. So there are always a few more things that we need to be able to understand. Please can you give us a link to the spray program to download? I think we're going to be sending that to all the participants that joined as well. Yeah, Christina has confirmed that one. Okay, David, does a Brix meet ensure all sugars or just complex sugars? So it's a very simple test. It's testing all the sugars inside your plants. It's a combination of everything that you have. So it's not specifically measuring one sugar. In a nutshell, we've got different sprays that we like: a potassium spray, a nitrogen spray, phosphorus, magnesium. They will spray onto different sections of different samples of plants. And then we can find out if the Brix content went up or down, depending on what we've sprayed on. And that's how we can start to test and see if the plant is responding better to more potassium, for example, or more calcium. We can start to identify, does the plant have enough or too little? So that's how we test specifically for a certain element. But to answer your question, David, it's actually looking at all the sugar that you have. So where can we get affordable meters to test nitrogen, potassium, and all the rest, and the pH? I use water tests at labs, which are expensive. So those tests themselves are quite expensive. In the commercial systems, we use digital pens. They are really great. You're able to just take a water sample, press a button, and it tells you literally instantly. But those do cost several $1,000 each. And the sensors are usually good for about 1 or 2 years, or slightly more than that. But for a small farmer, it is quite an expensive test. So being able to do a Brix test, and if you've got your different nutrient solutions that you can spray onto the plant, it would be a way where you can find out what the plants are responding to and what you might need to dose into the system. There are some like JBL test kits that you can use with the drops to do some of the tests for finding out the nutrients in the water. Those are usually a lot more budget friendly than doing your lab tests and also the digital pens themselves. So yeah, try Amazon themselves. There's also maybe actual like aquarium pet shops and stuff. There's usually a good one where you can find all the different tests as well. But otherwise, the JBL brand is usually the most common one. What about silicon? The silica in your system is not one that you're really going to test for. I've never tested for that in our commercial systems themselves. Yeah, it's not one that we usually test for. It'll be interesting to find out, but yeah, it's not one that we've done. So I can't really answer too much. Raji, can we have access to the recording session after the class? Yes, we will be making it available as the session is being recorded. So yes, we will make that available also with the notes themselves. I have aphid infestation on lettuce. I used bioinsecticide neem oil, but the aphids always come back the next day. They even developed wings. I have now started using the pressure washer to wash them off because I'm afraid the pesticides will harm the crops and the fish health. Is there a better way to eliminate aphids? Yes, that would be trying to get the nutrients in your system up to scratch and give the plants all the nutrients they need so they can create those complex sugars. The aphids in your lettuce usually are one that is quite common, as lettuce does have quite a low Brix level, and you do need to try and give the complete spectrum of nutrients that they are needing. One thing could be to look at your pH, make sure that is in the correct range, as well as the temperature as well, because those are probably the two most common things that can lock out nutrients. Secondly, if you are able to test your nutrients and if you are dosing, just be careful to make sure that you aren't dosing something too much because of the lockout. So if you look at something called Milder's chart, so if you aren't dosing too much of something, it can also create a knock-on effect to other nutrients and saying, oh, I actually don't have enough of calcium, for example, because I've supplied too much nitrogen, for example. But I'm going to look up Milder's chart. And if you are dosing some nutrients into your system, just be careful you're not overdosing, because that can also look like you are underdosing or have a lack of nutrients of other things themselves. So yeah, does anybody have any questions? You're more than welcome to also unmute and to ask questions if you want as well. But thank you for all those great questions that you asked in the chat. Oh, there's no other questions. Thank you very much for joining us and for asking all these questions. I hope that you found it interesting. We will make the slides available, as well as the recording and also the charts on to diagnose, and also on your different spray programs that we spoke about today. And we'll be giving you those monitoring templates as well. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Yeah, Mark, I just want to say thank you for the very nice information that you shared today, and say thank you to everyone that joined to this webinar. And also I want to remind you, everyone that want to follow our YouTube channel, we're gonna have available this webinar, also another very interesting content that you can find there, plus all the webinars and very nice content. And we will share the spray guide to all the people that were joining to this webinar today. We will send to your emails, and you will find also a special bonus, an exclusive discount for our next training that is going to start on November the 3rd, and is going to have you guys are going to have a special price only for the people that join to this webinar. So thanks so much, everyone, and I will be here in touch and in case that you need anything. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mark. Have a fantastic rest of your evening.